Hello, welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I am Renee Allen, the host and creator, producer of this podcast. And I don't say all that to brag at all. Not that that would matter, I guess, but I was just thinking about it. So also to explain if something's off with the editing, it's me. It's me figuring it out as I go. Today, I am talking about ADHD in relationships and the struggle to be understood. Do you ever feel like no one gets you or certain people don't get you? Probably happens a lot. Have you ever been in a conversation and you say something and you realize the person misunderstood? So you try to explain and they say, oh, like, you don't need to explain. They probably don't say it that nicely. They probably just kind of look at you like, okay, we can move on now. Or, okay, that's all right. Like, don't keep going. I've had this happen before. And the thing is what I've realized is it doesn't matter as much. That piece of information doesn't matter to them as much because they see it as inconsequential. Where for me, it's a difference of feeling judged and not judged. Like one time I was having a conversation with my husband and my daughter, and they said something about what would mom think would kind of like, there was a time in my life when I didn't eat any dairy or drink any dairy, and it was because of allergies. And now I'm more limited, but I wouldn't say I'm that limited. It's just I don't drink milk anymore. I never went back to regular milk. I drink almond milk now. So I'll eat ice cream. I'll eat cheese. So I still have dairy. But somehow it came up, but would mom think it was better to have milk or something else that was a healthier drink in their minds? And they were kind of laughing like mom would choose the healthier thing. And maybe that doesn't even matter to anybody. But it just seemed more like it seemed to me like they thought it was weird or bad that I only want the healthier thing. So this is just trying to simplify it in how it was coming into my brain. So I wanted to explain that I used to drink milk all the time. When I was younger, I had a glass of milk every meal. Even with cereal, I think we had a glass of milk. Maybe we got juice, but if we did, it was a tiny cup. And we had a whole glass of milk at dinner or at lunch. And I drank milk all the time. But when my allergies were really bad, my asthma was really bad, and I was looking for answers beyond being medicated all the time and still struggling, I decided to give up dairy and see if it made a difference. And it made a huge difference. And for a long time, I didn't have any dairy. And some of my children remember me more as being somebody who doesn't have dairy. But it's been many years since. And I eat pizza, I eat ice cream. And so in my mind, that dairy portion, the reason I don't drink milk now isn't because and even before, it wasn't because I thought people were awful for not drinking milk. But for some reason, I felt that from some people because, there are people who are kind of like, oh, you eat that way, you're that person, who knows? But all of this goes into my brain in this conversation. So I try to explain, well, I used to eat ice cream. I used to drink milk all the time. And it's not, anyway, it just went on and on. Because the more that I tried to explain, and I really didn't get to explain that much, the more I was cut off because it's probably sounded like I was arguing or it didn't matter to them. But the more that it didn't matter to them, the more I felt misunderstood. The more the less I felt validated. I already, for some reason in my mind, didn't feel validated to begin with in being seen as somebody who is that non-dairy person, which I really don't care if anybody's a non-dairy person, but none of that is the point. But I saw that the more that I wasn't understood, the more I wanted to explain. And the more I tried to explain, the more they didn't want to listen. And in my mind, I'm thinking they don't want to listen. But as a mom, when my youngest son would do this, I saw him as arguing. I didn't know he had ADHD at the time. I didn't know I had ADHD at the time. I didn't understand that in his mind, one, he does like to explore every option and he does like to have his own ideas, but he didn't feel understood. And the two of us together, it just wasn't a good combination because I wanted to be understood. But do you ever feel that way where you're just trying to be understood, and the more you do it, the more you're cut off or just told, oh, you don't need to keep going on that. And you even feel worse about yourself. Yeah, this could be that whole episode. I have 3 examples here of how we could not be misunderstood, and that one could just be the whole episode. But another one, I'll just give you this other one, is have you ever been in a conversation with somebody? And I would say this is usually with somebody you don't know as well. It could be somebody at a store, or it could be somebody that you're just getting to know. You're not friends with them yet, but you see them often or something. And the other person says something that's incorrect. Like it could be as simple as them thinking I have 4 children and I have 6. And for some reason in my mind, I don't want to correct them because I don't want them to feel embarrassed for not knowing. And maybe they wouldn't feel embarrassed, but these are all the things going through my mind. So I just let that go. And then maybe they might find out, oh, you have 6 children. And that could be that, but not me correcting them, because I feel like me correcting them might make them or cause them to feel a certain way. Like, oh, I should have known her better. I wonder if she thinks, I don't know. That's just a simple example. But a lot of times I found for years and years, and I'm talking up until maybe 5-10 years ago, where I would just nod and agree with people because I wouldn't want to correct them. And sometimes it's not important. And that's something we learn in life and learn to get along with people. Sometimes it's not important to even point out differences. But if they're wrong in it, sometimes it does matter, but that would get in the way. I'd feel like I was being dishonest. That's another thing we tend to do with ADHD, is evaluate things over and over and over. But I've learned that sometimes it's okay to do that. I can learn I can live with a little discomfort because it's probably me feeling less comfortable about it than they do, but maybe not. So I've started to have enough confidence or courage to correct the person and say, actually, that's not what it is. It's this. And determine when it matters and when it doesn't. However, I found when I do this, and especially if it leads to conflict, I feel horrible afterwards. I feel really horrible. And I'll give you an example. And I'm going to do my best to give you the condensed version, which will be long anyway, but it is the condensed version of the story. So I went to the optical department of Target to get my eyes checked last November. And mostly I need them for reading, but I have an astigmatism. And mostly I needed them for driving because at nighttime I have a problem with the lights and that sort of thing. And the prescription that I had just wasn't good enough anymore. So I went in and got my eyes checked, went in to pick up the glasses and looked through the store far away like I used to when I go to Costco for the optical department. And it wasn't that clear, but I took them home to see, well, maybe my eyes need to get used to them, and tried it at night and they weren't great. So I called and they said, bring them in and we'll see if we messed up on the prescription or something, or if you need a recheck. So I brought them in. They looked at the glasses. They looked at the prescription. I even brought my past glasses in, and they said, yeah, you need to get your eyes checked again, have another exam. So I did, and they ordered the second pair of glasses. And when I was there making that order, I asked, do you need the ones that I just picked up there, the frames, the ones that didn't turn out right? Because I was going to order the same frames the second time. And they said, no, you'll just get another pair of glasses. And I said, okay. I said, so I just take them home and they, because I didn't know if they wanted to recycle them or had some charity program or something like that. And they said, well, we can take them if you want. We have something that we can do with them, but if you want to take them, you can. And I said, okay, because sometimes I pop out the lenses of my old glasses and let my grandchildren wear them. And then they get to wear glasses. You know how like if kids put on glasses and they shouldn't be wearing them because it's not good for their eyes. So I thought, this could be something that they could play with or something. And this was at Christmas time. So it was a very busy time. And I have no idea what happened to those glasses when I got home. I'm sure I put them in a bag and I don't know what bag it is. And I never saw them again. I kind of forgot about it actually. But I waited about as long as it took to get the glasses the first time. And I did notice that I never received an email saying, we've ordered your glasses, but I thought maybe that's how it is with the replacement pair. And I recognized the woman who was there next to the man who was helping me, and she actually measured my eyes. She had been there each time. So I was guessing that maybe she was a manager because she had been there the 3-4 times that I'd been into that office or that optical department. She'd been there. So I got to where I was recognizing, okay, this is the man who helped me the first time. She's been here every time. This man helped me the second time. So she was there for that conversation about the glasses. And since I never received an email, when it was about the time that I would have gotten my glasses the first time, I called in and said, are they ready? And they said, no, they're still being processed. You'll get a text. And I said, well, since I didn't get an email, I just kind of wondered if maybe I wasn't going to get notified. And about a week and a half later, I called again, and I'm pretty sure it was her and who answered, the woman that I'm guessing is the manager. And she said, yeah, they're ready. They're here. And, I said, are my glasses ready? And she said, yeah, they're here. And I said, oh, I never received a text. Oh, you should have known. And so I received a text a minute after the phone call. So something must have gone into the system. So I went in to pick up the glasses, and she was the one helping me. And I'm remembering her because I've only been there a few times. She probably sees 50 plus 100 people a day and probably doesn't remember specifics or a conversation like I do. And maybe that's part of my ADHD gift is I do remember conversations, what people were wearing and all that stuff. So she looks for my glasses. I said, I'm here to pick up my glasses. And she looks and, could it be under something else? No. And were they contacts? No. And she looks in another drawer and she says, oh, you had a lens replacement. Do you have the glasses with you so I can put the lenses in? And I said, no, I was told I didn't need to bring the glasses back. And she said, oh, they would have told you to bring the glasses in because you were getting a lens replacement, not a new pair of glasses. And I said, but I asked, do you want the glasses? And they said, you could take them or we can keep them here. And she said, oh, they probably said we can keep them here or you can bring them back. And I said, no, that's not, they never told me to bring them back. Even when I called in to come get them, no one said, actually, I didn't challenge her this much quite yet. I just said, no, I kind of maybe just had a sentence of, no, they never told me to bring them back in. And she said, well, they would have told you that. So she was just corrected me again and again. And then she said, and so I let that go a couple times. I tried to let her know what happened. And she was thinking I worked with somebody else, and she kept saying, no, our employees wouldn't have done that. So it wasn't an outright challenge to her. I was just saying, this is what happened. And she was saying, no, they wouldn't have done that. This is the way we do things here. And then she says, well, can you bring your glasses in? Can you go home and get those frames and bring them in? And I'm just kind of thinking, oh dear, this is kind of, bringing me back to when my kids were in school and the teacher would say, we sent that form home for the field trip. And I'm thinking, I don't remember what I did with it when we got home, if it ever made it out of the car. You just kind of have this whole, oh dear, who knows? Like I haven't even thought about where those glasses were since I took them out of the store. And so I just said to her, no, I have no idea where they were. I mean, that was a while ago. I didn't think I needed to bring them back. And I have no idea where they are in my house. I don't even know if I'd be able to find them. that was my reality. And who knows? I may never see him again. Who knows? And so she's kind of looking at me like, well, you need those frames. And I said, you were here when I was told I didn't need to bring the frames back. I didn't feel like I needed to keep track of them because you were standing right here when I talked to the man and he told me that I didn't need those for the order. And even when I called in to see if they were ready, I was never told, oh, be sure to bring your frames in. I said, that wasn't the direction I was given. And you were here with the man here. You were part of that. And at that point, she stopped challenging me because I think I just had so much confidence and I had I had some details that maybe I'm not even sharing right now. And she just kind of said, oh, okay. And then when I said the thing about the person on the phone, she said, I'll have to make sure I let my staff know we can't do this. And I thought, well, you're part of it. And I'm pretty sure you're the person who answered the phone. But she stopped challenging me. But it got a little heated because I tried to say, this is what happened. I tried to say, this is what happened. And then I finally just said, no, this isn't what happened. And I didn't say anything like, I'm not lying, but I just said, you were here when it happened. I remember you were standing right there. This older gentleman was sitting there. This is what I was told and blah, 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 blah. And at that point, she just said, I'm sorry. And then she even said, it sounds like we have some miscommunication here and that it didn't go the way it needed to be. So she made my glasses and she handed them to me. And the second prescription didn't work either. I was just... Oh yeah, I was just thinking, I can't believe this. I'm gonna have to come back again. But anyway, I just said these are worse than the first ones. And she kind of asked me a few questions, and so she took them and said, you're gonna have to book another appointment and come in for another eye exam. So I didn't do it right then. I just said I'll call back in because I was a little exhausted by the whole experience, and maybe she was too. But I walked out of the little eye exam place and back into Target. And when you kind of burst into tears, but you don't fully burst into tears, that's what happened. Because it was so hard for me to challenge her. It was so hard for me to take a stand. And I was glad that I did it. But emotionally, I felt so bad. And I wouldn't say I felt guilty, but I very much tune into other people's feelings. And I've learned that a lot of times when I don't correct people, it's because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable in any way. If I can keep someone else feeling comfortable, and I know people call that people pleasing or something. I don't think I'm trying to please them. I just want people to be happy. And if I'm causing a disruption to their day in some way, that makes me sad. I don't want to do that if I can help it. And I tend to make an exception when it comes to protecting my kids, like with school teachers or something. And my mom's a school teacher, my daughter's a school teacher. It's not like I don't super love school teachers. I do, but there have been, when you have kids with ADHD and sometimes they're misunderstood, sometimes you have to help them out. So I've never felt that guilt with protecting my children or standing up for my children, but I do feel that way with myself. So, yeah, those are 3 instances, or maybe it just sounds like 2, of how ADHD and being understood, feeling validated, it's all very intertwined. We have a need to be understood. And part of that, I think I do stand up for myself in that being understood, that challenging somebody with information, whether it's correct or incorrect, it happens more if they think I'm lying. Or if they think I'm just wrong. I do that more than someone just saying something and I think, like that detail doesn't matter. But that's a very big need to be understood. If 100% I know I'm not lying, I know what I've experienced, and they're telling me it didn't happen. And if you've ever had this happen, maybe you don't have a problem with it. You're like, it doesn't bother me if they feel bad about themselves. But maybe you do have that empathy factor that goes with ADHD. Or maybe you do just have the conflict of Do I feel bad because the situation didn't go well because the person thinks something that's incorrect, or I feel bad because in my mind anyway, it didn't go well because I stood up with them and there was some conflict there. And I don't know. I don't like conflict. A lot of people don't. Uh, my daughters who have ADHD are more like that than my sons. And I'm wondering if that's more of an emotional challenge for women with ADHD than for guys, for men, for boys. And I'm not saying that boys don't want to be understood, boys with ADHD. My grandson, one of my grandsons, I have more than one grandson with ADHD, and probably a few more who haven't been diagnosed. But one of them, that's been a big thing from the time he could talk, is no, you're not hearing me. No, you don't know what I'm saying. And before he could get words in his vocabulary that could explain, that was extra frustrating for him. But even now that he's a little bit older and he can talk and express himself really well, when he feels like someone doesn't understand the impact that it's having on him, even as if his mom might say, I know this is upsetting for you, but we need to do this anyway. No, it's hard for him to give that up. So ADHD very, very, very much so impacts how we communicate with people in our relationships. It impacts our emotional regulation, how we feel about how things are going in relationships. Communication is very, very important for us. And also the social perception. And that might sound like, oh, I super care about what everybody thinks about me. It doesn't have to be like that. Like you have to feel like you have some standing in a social group or anything, but it's more just being perceived correctly. It's not like everybody has to know, the ins and outs of us. It's not like we go around telling everyone, oh, I am different than you. You need to know this about me. I found, I found it can, I don't know, when people are curious about ADHD, especially I would say a generation older than me, the more I talk about it, the less I can see that they're interested. they're not tuned in, and that's okay. But when it's affecting our relationships, explaining that can be helpful. At least I think it would be. And sometimes still they're interested and sometimes they're not. But what I really want to talk to you about today is how RSD can fit into this, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, whether you actually have that or not, or you have portions of it, can be a part of why you are impacted to the way other people look at you, what they say to you, if they listen very much or if they don't, because you may be more sensitive than most toward what other people think of you, or yeah, I guess just think of you, because how we interpret everything has really dials down to, is this what they think about me, or is this how they feel about me? And I'll do another episode just about that. And it'll probably come on Thursday, but maybe later on Thursday. I'm going to go to Disney World tomorrow and have my grandson here Thursday morning. So after that, I'll record that episode more about this rejection sensitivity dysphoria. But just touching on it lightly, you might have more of an emotional response with ADHD to other people's words, expressions, looks on their faces. Maybe that's an expression. Tone in their voice, any of that. You may have a greater emotional response, or interpret it to be more about you than somebody else might. And that could even go for having those feelings about other people. Like I said, with me wanting to protect other people and not challenge them so they still feel good about themselves in that day. And then to actually call out that woman and say, you were here too. You were part of that. It wasn't just the employees that, we can pretend they're the only ones that were a part of that, or I could pretend. But I think of Kathleen Kelly on You've Got Mail, if you love that movie as much as I do, that she has that line where she says, why do always people talk about like, oh, it's not personal, like don't take it so personally. She's talking more about business and stuff, but she says, whatever else anything is, it ought to begin by being personal. And I think a lot of us feel that way. It is personal to us and it might be personal to them. And that is important. And so understanding how that can interfere in relationships is what's important, because we might not always be able to change our emotional response, but knowing how to manage that in relationship with other people, not assuming that they're going to think horribly about us or something if we say a certain thing or whatever. Anyway, I won't go further into that, but just noting that you may have a greater emotional connection or response to things. But relating the RSD, or rejection sensitivity dysphoria, to what I was talking about at the beginning is when you may appear to be argumentative or you're explaining yourself. Some people might think you're over explaining yourself. Is that if you're feeling rejected or if you're feeling dismissed or like you're too much, like, okay, you've talked about that too much. You've shared that. We get it. You may feel worse about yourself because you're not only changing what you need to talk about in the conversation. And if you have that hyperverbal component of ADHD, you have a need already to express yourself and share. And then you're being told to stop that mid sentence or mid topic in your mind. And that can be hard. I don't know if people can understand it who don't have this desire, but it's like you're building this energy, you're building this energy. And when you get to complete that story and that thought, you feel this sense of relief because it's building up inside of you. It's part of that hyperactive component. Like you need to get that energy out, and that energy comes out with the story, but it's tied to the emotion of being understood or that need to be understood. And so when you're dismissed, either from just sharing or you're dismissed because it sounds like you're trying to argue or just give information that they don't see as information that is necessary, then that can cause you to feel that rejection. That can cause you to feel that rejection, or it can lead to that rejection. So that's one reason that communication or relationships can be impacted, because you might walk away from that just feeling like they really don't like me or they really don't value me. And you may, on paper or rationally, know that they do, and they may not feel any different about you in that second, but to you, it feels quite dramatic. And that may be one reason why. It's because you both have such different brains and see the whole conversation as different. You might also feel misunderstood with ADHD just because you're just trying to blend in with the topic and not say anything. And this is more like, just the not correcting a simple detail. When they call your dog a he and it's actually a female dog, and you go, oh, she's a girl, or something. And you just, and I know my examples aren't great, but you just nod and pretend. And then later you say something about your dog and you say she, and you say, oh, why didn't they tell you? I've had this happen where they say, why didn't you tell me your dog was a girl? I've been calling her a boy all the time, or something like that. And do they even say dogs, boys, and girls? You know what I mean? But I've had that happen where later they say, why didn't you tell me that? And you think, because I was too embarrassed. I knew somebody in the dorms. She was from France. And And she called me the wrong name for a really long time. It was something I can't remember. It was something like Alice or something. Like, it was completely different than my real name. And she'd say hi to me, and she'd say the wrong name, and I'd just say hi back to her because I felt too embarrassed to tell her that she had the wrong name, because I'd feel bad if I called somebody the wrong name. But then the longer that goes on, she's going to feel pretty stupid, and she knows that you know what I mean? So sometimes we just lie low to just I wouldn't even call it keep the peace. We just don't want someone else to feel bad. And then that can lead to some kind of emotional exhaustion in ourselves, because we're having this battle of, do we keep doing this people pleasing if it's really people pleasing? I just don't. Do you do that? Do you trip up at wording when it's not completely describing? That's a need to be understood right there. People pleasing. Am I really trying to please the other person? I don't know. Pleasing means something else to me, and I was an English major, but maybe I'm not getting it all. But another word for that too is, or another way that this happens, is masking. Just kind of pretending that you're somebody you're not, pretending you agree with somebody about their strong views about this or that. And really, in today's climate where people are divided in a lot of things, a lot of people challenge each other. I just smile and support people. It's not like I'm actually masking what I think. I'm just supporting them. And I feel like I can understand people better if I just listen to them. So if that's masking, maybe that it is. Maybe it is. Another thing that's really interesting, it's kind of, it's this seesaw thing, the opposites in a conversation, where you might be somebody who is seen as interrupting other people when they're telling a story. And it kind of depends on who you're talking to. Some friends you may chime in. That's what I call it, is chiming in back and forth. And you're really just kind of saying, oh yeah, I agree. It's kind of like if somebody was telling a joke and you're laughing, you're chiming in by showing them that you think what they're saying is funny. So sometimes when someone says something to me and they say, oh, when this happened 5 years ago, and I say, oh yeah, I remember that. And to me, that's all I'm going to say. And then they would keep going with the story. For some people, that works. And for others, I've been told, oh, don't interrupt. Why do you interrupt? I'm just trying to say this. And I think, oh yeah, that was interrupting. And maybe that interrupts their flow of being able to think about it. But I didn't see myself as an interrupter. But then when people tell me I am, then I see, okay, you're right. But with the people who get what I'm doing, it actually works in our conversation, because it goes back and forth, and we do a lot of saying, oh yeah, yeah, that kind of thing. And sometimes I do have to stop myself too, like, oh, I did that too. And I stop myself from getting into my version of it and let them keep up. But it's kind of these two sides of the seesaws. We can have both sides where we're either so involved in the conversation, or we can't even understand what they're talking about. We're struggling to pay attention. We're struggling to keep up. And it's not like we're not smart enough to keep up. It's just that our brain was somewhere else when they started the story. And then once they get to the part of the story that piques our interest for some reason, you think, okay, who is this about? Or when did this happen? Was this last week, or was this 5 years ago? Because sometimes it is that different. So sometimes just the different ways that we communicate, or the different ways our brains work in communication, can just cause some differences. Because if I'm somebody who struggles to pay attention in a conversation, the other person might think I don't care about listening to them, but I do. It's just that I couldn't always listen, and I wasn't always listening. So it's nice when we have people who understand us, but that can get in the middle of relationships. And then just the sharing, that sometimes we could be the person that sends a text, did I say texts? A text that has a lot of information in it. or is long. I'm learning to separate my sentences and texts to make them easier to read or separate them. And I don't always make them long. And sometimes I record an audio instead. But you might be the person that looks like, oh, you want to share, but you don't want to listen. So in both of those, it could be that, right? You're interrupting, you're trying to get in, you're trying to talk. But then when you're not paying attention and they're saying, are you even listening to me? And you think, oh yeah, you do want to listen, but you don't always listen. And then you might be the person that shares a lot in a text or sends an email with a lot of information, and then you forget to respond. And it's not that you don't want to be a part of that. It's just that your ADHD brain impacts that email conversation or that text conversation in different ways, or a physical conversation or phone calls. Do you remember to call back? I know people don't call each other as often. If you haven't used Marco Polo, just a little plug for Marco Polo, not that I have any financial ties to it, but it is worth the Marco Polo Plus if you have it. But it's a way to video chat with people that's like texting, that they talk to you and you may not see it right away, but when you do, you can answer right then, you can answer later. And it's just such an easier way to talk to people than texting, because you don't have to sit and use your fingers and use your brain. You can do it when you're walking through your house. You can do it on the go, which is nice. Every once in a while I sit down to Marco Polo. But the Marco Polo Plus, it gives you a few options like 1.5 times speed, which I feel personally responsible for. I don't know if it's true, but when I first had Marco Polo Plus, when I first had Marco Polo, they didn't have the Plus. Everything was free. And they had double time and I think triple time. And double time was too fast for my brain to keep up. But I thought if they had a 1.5 time. So I wrote to them a few different times, a few different ways. Could you get a 1.5? It would be so much easier. And I could really use it. I have a hard time with it being really slow, but I have a hard time with it being really fast. But yeah, the Marco Polo Plus, if you get enough friends or family members to be in on it, ends up, at least currently, it's $60 a year. So it's $10 a person for a whole year. And once you have it, you can share Plus passes, 2-month passes with other people. So if you want me to share my Plus pass with you, I don't know if I can actually through email, but yeah. So that's a great way to keep in touch with people. It's easier to remember to get back to them because it'll show you who you haven't responded to. The fourth or last example of how executive dysfunction, ADHD things can cause differences in relationship, challenges in relationships. My words don't always come out right, but is remembering small but meaningful things. So if it's meaningful for you to remember birthdays or getting back to somebody, it's like I said in the text, but let's just go with birthdays. So showing that you care for somebody is important to you and it's important to other people. And if remembering somebody's birthday, whether it's getting them a gift or just texting them or giving them a call or whatever your tradition is with that person, sending them a card, doing that is important for your relationship. It's been part of your friendship, or it's been part of your relationship with your mom, remembering Mother's Day. And if you forget, which is something that we do a lot with ADHD, it can impact that relationship. And if they're okay with it, that's wonderful. But what if you're not okay with it? You may put yourself through more from forgetting than they do. And it may take up a lot of brain power. My best friend that I grew up with had her birthday in January. It has probably been 3 weeks now. 2 days before and the day before, I started thinking about her and started thinking, you should text her and say hello. We're not in touch that much, but we grew up together, graduated high school and so forth. And we've been in touch and we've seen each other, but we're not on a day-to-day basis. We don't Marco Polo and talk on the phone and stuff. But I've always remembered her birthday. And I was thinking about her, and her birthday's now that I have had a granddaughter born on her birthday. It's the same day as my granddaughter's birthday. So that's kind of taken over in my brain of what that day of the year means. So anyway, the day after, I thought, oh my goodness, it was Cindy's birthday yesterday. You never texted her. You should text her. I thought that the next day. I thought that the next day. Then in my mind, the story went, you should text Cindy and let her know you were thinking about her up to the day, because I do this a lot. A lot of my birthday texts are, I thought of you the day before. I thought of you the day before that, and thought, okay, on that day, you're going to text her. And then on the actual day, I forgot. And so I've been trying to learn. Obviously, I didn't learn it because in January I didn't do it. But I've been trying to learn. If you're thinking about it a day or two before, just text her early and just say, I know I'm a few days ahead, but happy birthday to you, because they don't care. I wouldn't care if I got a text a day or two early for my birthday or a week later. But now it is February 4th. It's probably 3 weeks since her birthday. And it's kind of losing its momentum, the idea that, oh, I've been thinking about you all this time. If it's been 3 weeks and I haven't texted her, did I really remember her birthday? It's not that she wouldn't believe me. But now I don't have some clever, fun thing in my brain of, I've been thinking about you all this time. And yeah. And then you start to feel like the loser in the relationship. And I really don't think she thought on her birthday, Renee never texted me, that it matters to me. So yeah, relationships can be complicated because if you do forget someone's birthday, maybe it will matter to them. I know it would matter to my mom. And one Mother's Day, I totally forgot. And I don't know how, but it's just all of a sudden it was Mother's Day, and I called her and I talked to her and I said, I can't believe I forgot to send you a Mother's Day gift. And I think she was a little disappointed because I am the only one who does remember. I have 4 brothers and they don't, I don't think they'll ever listen to this. I shouldn't say I'm the only one who does remember, but she always tells me, you're the only one that sends me a gift. So they've probably remembered it in other ways. But since I've set that up, that's her way of knowing I'm thinking of her. And my brain totally spaced it for whatever reason that year. It has been nice with Amazon that you can get overnight delivery and stuff for gifts if you forget at least up to the night before. And now I'm learning about same-day delivery from places like Walmart and places in town. She lives in a small town, and that would be the only store in her town that would have something. But I guess gift cards, but I'm not much of a gift card giver. But yeah, follow through for things, whether we intend to do it or not. It can be hard. And if you're thinking about doing something, because working memory, you have to think about it, and then that idea has to go into a plan, and you have to execute that plan. And often when we think about things, it's when our brains are at rest. Like you're driving around and you think, oh, I never texted this person, or I never got him a gift, or I need to do that. And you might not be in a position to put it on your calendar. I haven't learned how to use SIRI or ALEXA. I'll just say it that way in case it activates your phone, in a way that I could just do that in the car. I should learn that, because I know a lot of women with ADHD just do that. They just tell their phones to remember for them. Oh, I could probably even tell it to order a gift, huh? But I like looking and choosing a gift. I don't want a computer to do it for me. So what are the answers to all of these things? That would make this a very long podcast episode if we explored all the answers. And maybe there aren't clear answers, but I think when you need to be understood, you have to do a few things and recognize that not everyone wants to hear what you have to say. And if it's challenging somebody that you don't really care about the relationship, or you don't have a relationship with them, like the woman in the store, although I did go back in for another visit because I had to go in for the eye exam and talk to her that day. And actually my text came yesterday that glasses are ready. So I'll probably go back in and see her today and pick them up. And we were very cordial. And I don't even know if she remembers me challenging her from before, because like I said, she probably sees 100 people a day. But if it's somebody who you don't have this ongoing friendship or they're not a relative, you may still want it to be a peaceful conversation, but you have to understand that because of the way you are, you get to choose. You either let them think what they think. Well, they're going to think what they think to some degree anyway. But if you're being challenged about your honesty and they're just thinking you just don't remember, or you're just not right, or you may be making this up because you don't know where your glasses are. It was nothing about that. If you decide to stand up for yourself and make it less comfortable for yourself, or maybe less comfortable for you, what you need to do is realize it's an exchange. You're exchanging one uncomfortable feeling in yourself for another. And if you value being understood to a degree that you need to be understood and you need to be clear that this is what happened, then do that and know that the exchange is you might be in tears a little bit later. You might go out to your car and think, I feel bad that I created with challenging that person some conflict. I'm not saying that other person will never have any responsibility in it, but it's a trade-off. Things aren't always going to be pleasant, especially when there's a miscommunication. And so I've had to learn that I have to live with things sometimes, and it may not always be pleasant. And I can, decompress by talking to somebody about it later. I can pray to just be relieved of those, awful feelings afterwards. Whatever it is that helps me, go teach a yoga class. That's always so nice on a day like that. Go teach a yoga class where I get that quiet too. And just find a way to manage it, because some of those are not win-win situations. It's one or the other. And then also just learning how to express your emotions without overwhelming other people. And that may leave you with feeling some discomfort, because they may close you off and just say, I don't need to hear more. And just know that you have to respect other people and sometimes just not be understood. It's not a fun feeling to not be understood, but it's just part of life sometimes. Yeah. And if you're finding that you're forgetting to answer texts a lot, like if it's becoming a problem that's interfering with the relationship, or you're forgetting birthdays and it means more for you, take some time out to think, what system can I set up that can help me not forget as much, or maybe not at all, but at least as much. Having a reminder in your phone. I haven't actually set something like that up. I did have, I don't know if it was Apple or what. Sometimes they would have birthdays in my phone, and I don't know if it's because I had contacts and people had put their birthdays in there. But my old roommate Jen and I were kind of laughing because I told her that it said in my phone her daughter's birthday was coming up that week. I've only met her daughter once. I don't know her daughter, but her daughter's birthday was in my phone, and I was getting reminders for it, and not Jen's. I don't even know when Jen's birthday is. It's in September, but that's all I know. So, if the phone can set that up for me, and I ended up taking off, unchecking that part on my calendar that said birthdays, because I thought it's giving me random birthdays of people that I'm not in touch with. And maybe I just need to set that up manually. But whatever it is for you, see if you can take a little time to do something that's important, but not necessarily right this second. It's not urgent. It's that one part of the quadrant of Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that's not urgent, but it's important. Taking time to do those things can help with the day-to-day life. And then with relationships where you feel like maybe you're not feeling as understood with somebody and you want to be, it may be helpful just to talk about that thing that situation, or just that concept of your need to be understood, or you chiming in. It might appear sometimes that I'm interrupting when you're telling a story. I'm really sorry when I do that. Having that conversation at a different time. I didn't realize I did that, but and I noticed it disrupts your flow of thinking, or it makes you feel like I don't want to listen. I really do. I'm just excited by the conversation, and sometimes I blurt things out, and I'm really just, happy to hear what you have to say. But I just want you to know I'm not trying to interrupt you. If I say something, you can keep going and let them know that. I've found that's the most helpful at another time. Maybe you're just in the car together and something comes up that kind of goes along with that about, I was on the phone with this person and they didn't get this. Oh, I don't know. If you find a time that's not in the conversation that you had the problem, it's always a lot more helpful. And even if it's a week later, a month later, whatever, and it comes up in some way, that can help with future conversations. Or if you've ever told a story and then someone says, you've already told me the story before, and then you kind of start to feel like, oh, they don't want to hear from me, or you feel embarrassed or something, even just letting them know, sometimes it's hard to remember if I've shared a story before. And sometimes I even preface stuff like that. Like, I don't know if I've told you this before, let me know. But even just an overall little preface to any conversation and just say, sometimes I'm not sure if I've told you before. So if I ever do start sharing something and you've already heard it before, feel free to just kind of wave your hand, like give them some signal, like wave your hand, like, oh, you shared this with me before. And I go, oh yeah. And then you could talk about something that's related to it. And I did that recently with my daughter, and she said, oh, I don't mind if you share things before. And I said, well, if it ever, gets exhausting, let me know. Because I know sometimes she has told me, like, you've already told me about that. But anything that you can do in a time that's not that moment can be helpful for the future. And just kind of understanding each other better. And you might understand something about your friend and why what you say causes a reaction for them. And, it could be really helpful. Anyway, that's it for today. Happy first week of February to you. If you're listening on schedule, I'm so happy that you're out there listening. When I hear from any of you, it makes me so happy. I heard from Laura this week, if you're listening, and that made me super happy. I actually heard from you on Friday, wasn't it? It's before the weekend. We had a lot of relatives here. 12. It's a lot of fun, but it was super busy. And I'm trying to get my life back to normal and try to remember who I didn't text or who I didn't email. And, I do get reminders. That is one thing that I've done. Speaking of the email and the text, if someone says, you didn't do this, and they usually don't say it mean or anything, but I asked someone to sub my yoga class tomorrow night so I could go to Disney World. And he said he could. And usually the next thing the person does is I will send an email to the lady at the gym who does the schedule so she can put his name in the class. And it's in the calendar. And I thought about that, but we had all this family here and I barely had time to write to him and say, hey, can you sub for me? And I thought a few times, you need to email Cheryl and let her know. And I didn't. And yesterday he said, could you email Cheryl? And I said, oh yeah, oh yeah, I'll do it when I get home because I was at the store. And so I actually set an alarm for myself for the time that I thought I'd be home. And it helped. That said, email Cheryl. But I thanked him for letting me know instead of just saying, oh yeah, these are all my reasons, which I did give him a few reasons. Like, all these people are in our house and I keep thinking to do it, but I haven't done it. And I said, thank you for reminding me because I would have forgotten. I would have forgotten again. And so sometimes thanking people for being one of our helpers and staying on track and keeping up and remembering to do what we need to do and what we want to do. But thank you so much for being here. And I will be back in a few days and I will talk about the RSD. Even if you don't think you have it, you might have a child who has it or someone in your family because ADHD is so highly hereditary and RSD does accompany ADHD quite a bit, whether it's you actually have that condition or I think it's a disorder. I'll have to look that up, what the official term for it is, whether you actually have it or just have some of the symptoms. But thanks so much for being here. Bye.
Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause, no time for a pause. The silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.